So this time last month when you and I met, and we met with Bill Evans, we were talking about what the Reserve Bank was going to do. We thought maybe 40 basis points. Of course, they hit us with the 0.5%. What do you reckon about that?
Yeah, look, it hit people between the eyes. I think the Reserve Bank are realising that that inflation outlook is much worse than they were assuming even a few months ago, and they wanted to sort of fast track some of these rate hikes. Remember that 2 months ago the official interest rate was 0.1.
Yep.
They went to 25 and they thought, gee, it's still pretty low. Let's go to 50.
Yep.
Let's get an announcement effect. So it's not only just the cash flow effect on people paying their mortgages, which is obviously happening, it's the announcement effect through the media. Wow, look at that. They're going really hard. And that impacts sentiment, it impacts spending, and it actually helps them meet their inflation target.
Let's just talk about the RBA governor copping all the crap he's getting at the moment. It's not as if he's the only one who makes a decision. He's got like 500 economists or something in the RBA. I don't know.
Correct.
They make recommendations all the way up the line. They're doing analysis based on what the ABS says. What do you think about that? The fairness or otherwise of it?
Yeah. Look, back in, I think it was as recently as October last year, so about, 9 months ago, Governor Lowe said he expects to keep interest rates at the 0.1% until 2024, and it is an important qualifier, by which time we expect to see inflation in our target range. And we're not going to hike before we see that. Okay, that was his guidance, I suppose you could call it. He was looking at the actual inflation data, which was at 1.5%, so below the bottom of the target range.
Below the bottom of 2 to 3.
Yeah, below the target range. And remember back in October, it's a horror movie when we look back on it now, but a lot of the eastern states were in lockdown.
Yep.
Queensland, New South Wales, the ACT and Victoria. WA had its borders completely shut to the rest of the world.
And we're saying we're not going to open until sometime next year.
And people, financial market economists, myself included, and the RBA are thinking, gee, what sort of recovery are we going to get? It's going to be patchy, it's going to be uncertain. So that's the guidance that he gave. Now, lo and behold, 2, 3, 4 months later, bang, we had this, what do we call it, the supply side shocks, the constraints on freight shipping rates. There were no computer chips to be going into the manufacturing process. The cost of international shipping went up. The price of a lot of commodities went up because, of course, all of a sudden the global economy recovered, inflation shot up, and there was the RBA governor so thinking, gee, he was wrong, and he's admitted this, and to his utmost credit, I got it wrong, he said earlier this month, or last month, I should say, in June. So,
but I can only stop
but then he's changed his view because the facts changed.
Yeah, but when he says he got it wrong, but I don't think he got it wrong at the time.
Oh no! Well,
as it turns out, I got it wrong because wars, supply chain problems, and inflation just caught us
off guard.
Caught us off guard. I judge him on the facts that he would have known at the time because he can only act on the data. He can't sort of look out for the future. They don't. They look at what's in front of them. They play what's in front of them. And what was in front of him at the time turned out not to be right, and he's admitted in hindsight he was wrong.
And the thing we've got to remember, Mark, is that the RBA meet every month, except for January when they have summer holidays, fair enough, but they meet every month. So if the facts change, it's not as if we have to wait 6 months for them to adjust their view of the economy or when the facts come out. And I dare say they were sitting there in February and March this year thinking, wow, isn't it good that the unemployment rate's at a 50-year low? Wow, that inflation rate, that's a bit uncomfortable. We didn't see that happening. And so that when they met in April, they signalled for the first time, gee, maybe we might have to hike rates early. Then they got the very high inflation number at the end of April for the May board meeting, and that's when they delivered their first hike. So
and they can't get that number any earlier, right?
No, they don't get any earlier.
So you don't get it on the 1st of April, which is the day after the end of the quarter. You've got to wait 20
You've got to wait
days.
till the 25th, 26th, 27th, whatever the exact date is. The Bureau of Statistics released that number. But the other really important thing to remember too when we judge the RBA is that they are also trying to see what's happening in the global economy. Australia, we're a big economy in a sense, but we're small compared to the US, to China, to Europe and all the rest of it. And so what happens there is also important too. And you've got to remember that when the RBA was looking overseas at the end of last year, the US economy was still weak. The Fed in the US Federal Reserve, the same as our RBA, hadn't started hiking rates yet, and they still had what we call quantitative easing. They were still printing money.